It's hard when you get old, isn't it? Don't remember everything I should. So on page 123, it talks about accounts receivable. And the first step is setting up our customer list, right? So they talk about on page 125, the customer ID. And here's my first light bulb. It is very important that this customer ID be set up appropriately. So first off, number of, can I say digits? Be consistent. If you're going with 4 digits, you have to be 4 the rest of the way. Or if you're going with 5 or 6. Another thing to worry about is most companies will do an alphanumeric. What does alphanumeric mean?
Alphabetic order and then from
Alpha with a number, right? Alpha is the alphabet, number is number. And most companies will do it alphanumeric so that their customer list will always be in alphabetical order, right? Rather than just using a plain number system. So keep that in mind when you're doing that creation. And most companies will have a customer list already. It's just building upon that list. But if you're starting scratch, you have to be aware of those things. In the old days, once you created an ID for a customer, there's no changing it. But now with Sage and the software programs, you can change the ID. Let's say you had a spelling error in the alpha part of it, or you wanted to change the number, you can. In the old days, in order to change it, you basically had to create a new customer and get rid of the old one. You couldn't change it. Also, when you create a new customer, Sage has a little toggle button to tell whether it's prospective or inactive. So I'm going to go to that part. So I'm going to create a new customer in Sage. I'm on the customer menu bar right now. Customers and sales and new customer. So where I'm at is right here. Prospect means we haven't sold anything to them, right?
Yes.
There might be a customer potential here. So you can turn that on and get a list based on prospective versus others. The one I really want to key on, though, is inactive. Those are for those customers we don't want to sell to, right? So inactive is basically another audit feature. If I want to make somebody inactive, I don't want Tom to accidentally sell something to them, right? So that's where the inactive key comes into play. So the book talks about that inactive key. And also, what I would like to mention is this inactive also is dropped or removed from the list entirely after the year is closed. So with Sage, we can have 2 years open. After the second year, if I want to start a third year, I got to close the oldest year. At that point, all inactive customers are off the list. And again, this is important for audit reasons. And this too is a possibility of embezzlement. I can certainly, right, more likely make myself an investor. I could, let's say I had a customer who was a friend, right? I could actually delete an entry or delete an invoice that they never paid for. So I can sell to them and actually never collect the money if I'm being dishonest, right? So get or keep your, I don't care if it's a customer list or a vendor list or an employee list, they have to be clean. Only active should be on that list. Now, so much found on the new customer section. And I've got this on the bottom of page 1, customer type, customizable fields, what sales tax code, Wisconsin has 72 counties in it. If you sold to every county in Wisconsin, guess what? You'd have to have 72 codes ready. So it's not an easy task. So because Wisconsin has a 5% rate, right? What's the county rate?
I only know Shauna's.
What's Shawano's rate?
0.5.
Excellent. That's the county rate. Together, what do we pay? 5.5. That's it. Now, there are some counties that don't have a county tax. Outagamie doesn't have any, right? But where the customer is determines the tax, right? So if I'm shipping to Shawano County, I better be charging 5.5. And we have to tell the state how much we had in sales for each county, because they need to know how much money, when they get ours, right, they give to each county. So at least we don't have to write out 72 checks, one for every county. We only write one to the Wisconsin Department of Revenue, and then they do the work. So that's how it works. I do have a small little screenshot of this Wisconsin setup, and you can see how they come up with the 5.5. We're setting up a Brown County and Wisconsin. And what's nice with the Sage software is you set up those codes in those counties right in this customer screen here. Now, it's a shame they really don't talk about this much in Chapter 4, which is what they should. They just mention it. And the example in some of the chapters is there's only one code, the state code. You set up 7% for California, for instance. Well, most states don't do it that way. They have a state and a county tax. The combination is what we were looking for here. So it's really simple, guys. You just go in there and you say, set up a new code, say next. What is the total? 5.5, consisting of how many? 2, a state part and a county part.
Why does it go with the 5?
There might be a state, county, local, city. So you could have, in some areas, 4, maybe 5. They're just keeping it open for how many authorities you could have in a certain area. I know 5 is crazy, isn't it?
No.
Wisconsin, we're only at 2, right? And then click next, and then you identify each one separately, right? We'll do more of this discussion next week when we get to our net solutions, because you will have to set this up for the project. All right, so if you go to a new customer again, back to here. Well, I think I have it open already. You'll see those questions asked. Here's customer type. Here's the sales tax code that you're going to use. Here's the customizable fields. This is all discussed in Chapter 4. And there's 5. QuickBooks also has 5. It's kind of interesting how they copy each other. So you could have a birthday here of the owner that you're selling to, or just little things that you want to track for that customer. So it's nice, and you can make your own headings here. That's what the word customizable means. I can change what I want to track for that particular customer. All of this is on this general tab. But then I go and talk about history, sales info, payment. Each one of those are talked about in Chapter 4. I'm not going to go screen by screen. But I do want to mention a couple things about those tabs. So if I go back to my notes. Oh. Oh, okay. Thanks, Olivia. Thanks for letting me know. At the bottom of page 1, history tab. Let's go to page 127, please. So in the new customer, the history tab is customer since, last invoice date, last invoice amount, and so forth. The last choice is this customer beginning balance. You will do this in the case, I think. But basically, if I'm starting with Sage Software, let's say they're in a manual system, and they have been running their business for many years, customers have balances. And what you need to do is get those balances into the software system, right? This is where you do that for each customer. You go to this history tab, you enter in the amount owed by that customer. So here we go. Gosh, Gary. I'm going to create one here. Let's clear off the ink. That's kind of messy. I'm going to go to the history tab. The customer beginning balance is right on the bottom here. So I go in there. I'm going to save it, yes. Open up. Oh, there it is. What does it ask for? It asks for an invoice number, a date, and amount. Yeah, there's most companies don't have a PO, but if there was, you could put that in, and then the amount here. So you could put each invoice outstanding, right, and the amount of that invoice. That way you can pay off that invoice. But what if a customer has 100 invoices? One customer has 100 invoices. Kind of a problem. Because you don't have a lot of time when you do a transfer. A couple days
But
maybe.
in the textbook, they put the beginnings balance at the invoice number.
Yeah, I can use the word beginning in the invoice number and put the total here. Right? That's what most companies do. But the problem with that is I don't have a history now. Because the customer is going to pay a specific invoice. If I put a single amount here made up of multiple invoices, I don't know which invoice that you're choosing. So that's the drawback. Speed-wise, it's good. Drawback is I lose my history. So actually, companies will do both. They'll actually have their manual system keep that one going until it's gone, and then do the same thing that they do here. Just take it off the amount. So it can be done, but it's tedious. Now, the problem is, when I hit save here, it saves it in their record. It saves it in the subsidiary, but the save doesn't go to the general ledger. So this 50,000 that I just put here does not show up on my balance sheet. Oh, is that a problem? So when I run my aging report, it's going to be $50,000 higher than my balance sheet. QuickBooks, you couldn't do that. It automatically went in there. Sage treats it differently. So my question is, and they don't talk about this in the book. My question is at the bottom. So I've entered this beginning balance. It does not show up in my accounts receivable general ledger, my balance sheet. How do I get it in there? what would you do as the accountant? How do I get anything in my ledger sheet?
Look at journal entry.
You have to make an adjusting entry, yeah. So I'm gonna debit accounts receivable for what?
50.
The balance amount.
The 50,000. Let's just say that was the only customer that had a beginning balance. What are you gonna credit?
Sale.
I don't want sales 50,000 that's already been previously recorded in my sales for this year. That would be bad. I'd be paying tax on it twice then.
That's true.
So what's my only alternative? Where does my sales go to
Oh,
after
retained.
retained earnings? Yep. That's the entry. Not that you're gonna do that in chapter 4, but whenever you set up a new system, you've gotta be aware is if I enter a beginning balance in any of my customers, my vendors, my employees, right? How does that affect my general ledger? That's what I want you to be aware of. In some cases, like QuickBooks, boom, it's there. Sage treats it differently.
Why is that? Or is
It's
it
just how they're programmed.
Okay.
And if you're on a different accounting system, you gotta figure out what happens when you put a number in here, right?
Right.
All right. Page 2. You have to have a default GL sales. Yes. When you set up a new customer, you have to give that customer a default sales account. Sage wants to know, I debit accounts receivable, what do you want me to, in most cases, credit? So you have to give it a default sales account. Now, remember, it's overruled by an inventory item. So if you're selling parts to a particular customer, the part dictates the revenue, not the customer. The part dictates where the sale goes to. Again, this is very common, but again, when you start entering transactions, if I enter a new invoice to a customer, what is the first thing you need to do after you hit the save button? What accounts changed, right? So, what accounts change when I hit a sale?
Balances and
Accounts receivable is affected, right?
yeah,
A credit is going somewhere for the sale.
yeah.
What else could possibly be affected at the time of sale?
Cost of goods sold.
Debit or credit?
Debit. Debit.
I was just checking to make sure you were confident with that answer. What else?
Inventory.
Credit to inventory. Good. For the cost amount, right? These two go together, just like AR and sale go together. What's the fifth possibility? If I have sales tax. What is sales tax? Debit or credit?
Sales tax.
It should be a debit. It's liable.
It's a liability. It's a credit.
Yeah.
Sales tax payable is the credit. Why is it not an expense?
Because we have to pay the
We have to pay the state, right?
Mhm.
We're just a conduit. You know what a conduit means? We're just collecting it from the customer. We hold it for a little bit, and then we pay it to the state. It's not our money.
Yeah.
We're not paying it, right? The company doesn't pay sales tax on its own. It's not an expense then to us. Countless times I see a client with sales tax expense. Oh boy, that's not right. And if a banker saw that, they would say, oh my gosh, you don't know how to run this system, right? So how can I trust your financials when I see that kind of mistake? So everybody understand why sales taxes are payable then. We're just a collection agency for the state of Wisconsin, right? It's never an expense to us. And it should be where? On our balance sheet as an other current liability, right? It's not an accounts payable, other current liability. All right. Credit terms. What are credit terms?
It's like
Net 30
or discount.
or discount if they pay early, right? Yep. That also should be set up under the defaults. So here again, back to the software. Oh, and this is discussed on page 128. Customer defaults is where I'm at. Credit limits and so forth. So under maintain. Remember, under maintain is where we put our customer list, our vendor list, employee list. But there's also default section, right? Way on the bottom. So for every software program that you use, even before you put in the customers, you should go to the default section. The reason that this is important, I'm going to pick customers, is I can set up what is the normal terms for most of our customers. What is the normal discount period for most of our customers? And when I set up a new customer, all this default information flows in automatically. Look at all these questions I can complete in one stroke. For everybody. So it saves time. Some clients have 500 customers. Do you want to put the terms in on every one of those? No. You set it up in the default and save some time, right? Many weekends, guess what? We're spent entering in beginning our customer lists, or vendor lists. Because Monday morning, you got to hit the road running, right? Yeah. Also, you can set up your default sale and discount accounts here as well. What's the most common? And then you can set up aging periods for your reports. You can set up finance charges if you do add finance charges to late payments. Never worked for me, so I never set them up. I told you that story, right?
No.
If you're a small company, you're at the bottom of the totem pole. And then pay period, payment methods, cash, check. Sage does have credit card, but again, that's an additional service. All right. So just be aware of that when you set up or start a new section. Always go to the defaults. What's my next light bulb guy? Page 138, 141. Let's see what that invoice looks like. 138, please. Figure 4-7. Look for the AR control account in figure 4-7. Does everybody see it?
I'm just cold.
Oh. What's the control number? 104. Allison, what do you think 104 is? What's the GL account description on 104? If I'm invoicing a customer, not checking, on account, when I invoice, accounts receivable, right? That's the debit. So it's asking, where am I debiting the account to? right? Here's a cute story. I told you this too, I think, didn't I? I had a client felt that on every invoice they had to put the income account in the control account, which, by the way, matched this account. So she did the entire month trying to match this AR control account to this account. So what happened when she ran her income statement? Zero. Because the debit and the credit went to the same account. Okay? Oh, she panicked. Right? So again, when you don't understand what's the debit and the credit, so what should she have done as soon as she did the first invoice?
Looked at the statement.
Looked at the statement. Did it go into the revenue account the way it should have? Did it go into the accounts receivable account that it should have? Right? So, here's another global feature I want you to be aware of. I was going to say cognizant of, but I have a hard time with that. Under Options Global, you can hide the general ledger accounts. So I'm going to hide it now. I don't want you to hide it though.
Yeah, I was like, why would you do that?
I'm just saying, if you're having somebody else inputting, that you don't want them to mess around with the AR control account, then you would hide. But for our purposes, do not do this. Right?
Right.
So press OK. So now when I create the invoice,
Can you show me that again?
it's under Options,
Yeah.
Global. It's right under the Accounting tab. I'm right here.
Oh, okay.
So I can hide the AP also if I wanted to when I enter in an invoice or purchase.
Yeah.
So I'm hiding it just for practice here, just for fun. I'm going to create my invoice. And now that control account that was sitting here is gone. So now I can't change it. And also notice there used to be a GL account in every line. That's also gone. That stinks. So that's why I don't want you to turn that on, or hide it. I want you to display the accounts. Again, I'm only doing that to keep people's fingers out of the pot. So under Options, Global, make sure that that hide is removed. I don't want to hide it. Okay. Let's see. Next, always dates. We talked about that. Tax code 1 means it's taxable. That's what Sage uses. Number 1 means it's taxable. So if I go to that create an invoice, it's really hidden. It's hard to see. Actually, I'm going to make this bigger. Sydney, can you shut that door, please? So here's my invoice. I turn my accounts back on. Right here tells me it's taxable. And then if I pull this list down, oh shoot, let me clear it again. Numbers 2 through 10, yes, there's 10 different exemptions. Is it more than 10? I think there's only up to 10. Oh no. There's 25 exemptions, possibilities. It could be a resale exemption, right? It could be like a service exemption. It could be milk that we're selling, so they don't get taxed, right?
Yeah.
So it could be an item exemption for some reason. Each, again, industry has their own exemptions. So that's what the numbers 2 through 25 are for. So everybody, one is taxable, right? So then it should, once I do this, it should compute a tax amount. Based on what? The agency that we're selling to, which again, the customer will dictate this, right? The customer location will tell me whether, this is a Georgia one, whether they're in Cobb County, DeKalb County, Fulton County, or whatever. Sales tax, I can't emphasize how important that is. You cannot mess up on this. So, the reason we cannot mess up on this is, guess what? When we do our ST12, right? Oh no! The state of Wisconsin. Oh boy. The state of Wisconsin wants to know their cut, right? What is the state's cut? It's in step A. 0.05, which is what? 5%. That's their cut. They get that amount, right? Step B, county. What's their cut?
0.05. So,
0.005 or 0.5%, right?
mhm.
Now, not every county, right? So we have to tell, Brown County is 5. Don't ask me why. So you have to tell by county, 72, what the sales were for each county. And, well, there's only 4 here. The other 68 are on Schedule CT.
I like how they still have the football stadium on there.
Yes.
Do you think they keep it on there because some people get confused? They just
No.
pay more tax.
The state of Wisconsin doesn't have a paper copy anymore. I can't get a current version.
Oh, okay.
So I'm stuck with this old one.
Don't they have like a PDF online somewhere?
No.
Really?
Why does the state not want you to use a form?
Because people mess it up.
Just the
People mess it up or they want it electronically.
Yeah.
Everything's electronically submitted now.
Or
So-
that costs more money to process it.
It does, very much so. So all companies fill this out electronically now and submit the payment electronically. So there's no more forms. So we're stuck. So I'm just crossing number 16 out. We will be using 9A, because that's technically where it would be, as part of the counties that we sell to. All right?
Even if you're a small business, will you still have to file it online for that as well?
I don't think there's any exemptions. I really
Okay.
don't.
That's
I
good.
haven't seen any. I can't say that for certain, but
Okay, that's good to
the
know.
Wisconsin Department of Revenue, you do what they tell you to do.
Pretty much.
Okay? Also, remember those codes 1 or 2 through 25?
Mhm.
They show up here in lines 2 and 3. We'll practice this once we get to chapter 9. But here again, you have to make sure when you're creating that invoice, you know the exemption reason. Because it makes a difference whether you're on line 2 or line 3. Look at line 2. You have to have an exempt certificate, which is dictated by the customer. You ever go to Fleet Farm and they ask you, are you a farmer?
Yes.
That's why they gotta fill out this ST12 properly. Goes on line 2. All sales to farmers go on line 2. Or, it could be a government agency, a school, the Oneida Indians, right?
Mm.
If you're selling something to them. Or,
Is that for all
All tribes.
Okay.
Manufacturer is another reason, because they make something out of your stuff, right? Or you sell it to Walmart,
Resale.
resale exemption. Those all go online too. So the first thing a Wisconsin Department of Revenue agent will say, hey, you have an amount on line 2 for the month of January. What customer is that going to? So you gotta look up your history, right? And then they're gonna ask, okay, where's their exempt certificate? You better have that on file. If they don't, guess what?
Audit.
That's not an exempt sale then. You don't have an exempt certificate from that customer. So then you owe us money for that tax. You think you're gonna go back to your customer and say, hey, you owe money? So I can pay the Wisconsin Department of Revenue your sales tax? No.
That would not go well.
No. The line 3 then is product that we're selling. Look at what's here. Real property, groceries, right, are exempt. Highway fuel, because they pay the tax at the time of purchase the fuel from the gas station, I think. Now groceries would be milk, right, bread, not cigarettes, right, or alcohol. Those are taxed. All right. So again, I'm just referencing as to why those are important when we do our invoicing. Again, I talk about those exemptions here. So this is line 2. Line 3 is for services or product that we're selling. So that's all covered. Deposits. Let's go to page 142, guys, of our book. And you probably did this in QuickBooks as well. Figure 411. I would like you, for the deposit ticket ID, to use the date as the ID. All deposit ticket IDs use the date of that transaction as that ID. So if we're looking at March 5th, you could just put March 5th like that. 03, 05. I don't really care about the year. It's just an ID number. What Sage does then is all deposits with the same ID, because let's say I have 10 checks to enter today, right? All of them with the same ID, I'm going to lump together and make a deposit entry into the checkbook.
Okay.
Why is that important?
You can check what day, if you are looking back invoice, what day it is and where it's going to.
Yeah, where do we go with our deposits at the end of the day?
To the bank or.
So to the bank, right? So we want to match what we're doing. We'll match what the bank is doing. Why is that important? So let's say my deposits for the day were $10,000, made up of 10 different checks. Why is that important that I match the bank when I'm depositing that day? That's my main thing for audit purposes, right? And bank reconciliation.
Oh, yeah.
I cannot do a bank reconciliation if my deposits don't match the bank's, right? So that's the key here. Because if you don't do that, oh my gosh, it's really hard to reconcile
It'll be a mess.
a checkbook if the deposits don't match. What's also important? Well, I could record, put in my books 10,000, I pocket 2, I deposit to the bank 8. Could I do that? Yes. Does it happen? Oh, yes. Right? So who's doing the bank rec?
You,
I am with the $2,000 in my pocket. Yep, 8 is what we got, right? So eventually, what is the checkbook going to look like? It's going to be worse than the bank. So what do I do if I'm a disgruntled employee and pocket the $2,000 and want to cover my tracks? I'm short $2,000 now compared to the bank. How do I cover my tracks? I'm teaching you how to embezzle from your company.
And make the journal entry.
Make an adjusting entry. Oh, sure. Yes. That's how I do it. So what's my adjusting entry going to be?
Maybe you write off account receivable or you give discount or something.
Allowance for,
Allowance or write off the account. Yep, because I didn't get the money technically. So I wrote it off. I can do it that way, or I can make an adjusting entry maybe to an expense account, purchases. Nobody sees that anyway. So I'm going to debit my expense for $2,000 that's going to be buried. I'm going to credit cash because I don't have it there. Now my checkbook balances because my checkbook matches the bank now. See how easy that was? One little journal entry. How quick is that? Yes. Happens all the time. I've seen wives steal from husbands or husbands steal from wives. It doesn't, relatives doesn't matter here, it's money. Right? Okay. If no ID is entered, we have to fill out a deposit ticket. So just like QuickBooks, so if I go to the software, I'm under receive money here now. Look at what's below receive money. Make deposit. QuickBooks does the same thing. So I'm saving a step by putting the ID, the transaction ID in, right? I don't have to do that step then of make a bank deposit. All right, is that good? Now, on page 147, there's something called action items and event logs. I'm just pointing you to that page. You have to do it for your case. It's Sage's attempt to give you the opportunity to make notes on a customer, like call if their balance goes over 10,000, or
also kind of reminders.
reminders, yes. Or an alert is, tell me who is over their credit limit, right? And it tells me all the customers that are over their credit limit. That's what it's there for. So before you do the case, just review this section so you know how to set up an event, you know how to do an alert. And then there's to-do notes. Pick up milk. That's what that to-do note is for. Okay. Page 161. I know I'm jumping because this is all that event and actions. Page 161 finally is back to the accounting world. We have the direct write-off method or the allowance method, right? The book uses the direct. The book uses direct. And if you go to page 159, I'm sort of backing track here a little bit. It's debiting 62,000 and crediting 11,500. 45,000? Oh my gosh. All right. Adjustment for bad debt loss is the description. And then the one below it is the allowance method. So if the first one is the direct write-off, the second figure, 430, is the allowance method. The case will use the allowance or the direct method. Turn to page 4, guys. Probably my biggest pet peeve is right here of the entire book. Here it is. We're doing a write-off of a customer. So the write-off is
Maybe
a debit
it's him,
to uncollectible expense and a credit
receivable.
accounts receivable. My issue here is where they're entering this. That's my issue. It's in the receive money section. Why?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, why? You would never ever do this in practice. We need to use the credit memo tab. There's a tab actually called credit memo. Why would you not put it there? And the only reason I can think of is the author didn't want to explain that part of the program. So let's just talk about receive money and enter it there. The problem is the receive money, the debit and the credit, look at what they're putting in for the cash account in the figure 4. Gotta turn the page. Go to page 163. They're changing the cash or checking account to the uncollectible. That's my big beef here. So the debit's going there, the credit's going to AR. It's not a wrong entry. But if I ran a cash receipts journal, which I'm going to, I'm an audit person, right, for this day, and it shows, how much did they write off here?
$4,000.
4,000? Guess what? My cash receipts will show 4,000 more than I actually deposited. You want to get some auditors excited, because they're going to match that cash receipts journal to your deposit for the day. That's a problem. So right away it's red flags. Where'd the money go? Auditors like to find when people are sneaking money. It's their day. Right? So that's why it's never done this way. So what I would like you to do for the case is enter this credit memo through where it should be. On the program, it's simple. You just go down here, credits and returns. Why wouldn't you use that button? If you go into the credits and returns, it looks like an actual invoice. It's no different than creating an invoice. And what's nice with the credits and returns, I get to pick the old invoice that the return goes against. Wouldn't your customer like that return to go against the invoice that they're returning on? Well, of course. That's how you should do it. And it also adjusts my sales tax at the same time. Because I had a sale, they're returning it. Why am I paying the state of Wisconsin? Because they already have their money, the sales tax on a return. Where does returns go on your ST12? Look at your ST12. Line 4. That's how I get my money back from the state. Right? Because remember, I fill this form out, I pay the tax in before I get the money from the customer. The state doesn't wait till the customer pays. They want their money immediately. All right. So sales tax is generated when? When the invoice is created, right? That's when it's a liability to me. Not when I get the money. All right. Back to page 4. We're almost done here, guys. So I talk about the credit memo. Apply to invoice tab. If the invoice number is out there, the old invoice, that's what I should be using. But what if the customer already paid that invoice? Well, then I have to be on a new sales tab. So the customer, if I'm doing a credit memo without an invoice to apply it to, will actually have a negative balance temporarily until they buy something new. So you have no choice. More than likely they want their money. So then you got to cut them a check. That's how it gets reversed. The what sales tax report needs this information? The SP12 line 4 is where that return is recorded, and my sales tax I get back then on that return. And if you do it the book way, what report is ruined? The cash receipts journal. As our example, it's going to be $4,000 more than what I deposited, right? Because we wrote it off. Use the cash entry. That's where that special journal is, again, so critical, that all deposits are in that cash receipts. All checks are in that cash disbursements. I don't care if we get money from an owner or not, it better be going through the cash receipts special journal. It has to. If we get an IRS refund, it's got to go through the cash receipts journal. Because we're going to make a deposit. Oh, all right. So, the case for chapter 4. Anybody have some final thoughts? Gary, you've been talking enough today. But besides that, any other thoughts on, again, you haven't gone through it. But let me know if you have questions as you're going through chapter 4. Page 171, Tracy is the company. We're actually doing 2 parts here for Tracy, A and B. Or how about 1 and 2? Sorry. 1 and 2. On page 171, you're going to create some new customers. There's only 3, so it shouldn't take too long. Page 172, we finished that. There's only 3 customers. At the bottom of page 172, we're going to enter our transactions. Now, let's review the hint. Just look at the hint on the bottom of page 172. Just take a moment, go to 172. If you're doing something else, just pop there. Look at the hint. They talk about cash sales in the hint. Where does the hint say we should record the cash sales?
General journal.
General journal. So Allison, when they say general journal, what does that mean? I'm going to need to know the debits and credits of that entry. So I'm going to debit cash, right? I'm going to credit sales. That's my entry. However, I don't want you to do the hint. Don't do hint. Where should the cash sales go in? If I'm looking at my program, I have a cash sale. Where does it go? Receive money. Again, in real life, I don't want you to be making adjusting entries for cash sales. You would never, ever, ever do that. So here's another bad practice. So use received money. Now, your first cash sale is transaction number 2, January 4th. The problem with received money, it asks for a customer ID, right? But with what's nice about Sage, you can skip it. Under the name, you have to have a name. You can put in cash sales.
Okay.
Skip the ID, go to the name, type in cash sales, and then you should be able to save it. So behind the scenes, what does it do? I'm making a deposit, I'm receiving money, right? I'm debiting cash, and I need to pick the revenue account. Now it says tax prep service, which would be a separate one than accounting service. So some sales are tax prep, some sales are accounting service. You're going to have to change the GL sales account depending on the type of income. Because on the income statement, what do we want to do? I want to track the amount of sales for each service, right? Use the income statement for information. Is everybody comfortable with that change? Don't do the hint. Put the cash sales in received money.
When they said they sell for cash, and what company? They didn't tell what company.
Yes, so just type in cash sales in the name. That's why we did it this way. If you don't know the company,
Yeah.
just put in cash sales for the name.
Okay.
Now, some clients will set up an ID called cash sales, but you don't have to.
And change GI to cash, right? Or sale?
Just the sale account.
Okay.
Another change for the case is the alert. You have to go to change it from 2,500 to 1,000. So this is another change for case. You should get 2 customers that are over the $1,000. If you put in 2,500 for the alert, you won't get anybody because nobody's over the 2,500. So let's make it practical and actually see if it works. You should get 2 customers that have balances over 1,000. That's the other change. Also with the cash receipts journal, I think you're going to have to, sales journal. Add the GL description, because that's not normally on that report. So add it and then move it next to the account number. So for the sales journal, please add the GL description to that report. There's a lot of stuff going on. If you have questions on the question in the case, am I always clear on the question? No. You may not understand what the question's talking about. Please let me know if there is a question on the question. Because that's what your boss is going to be asking you. And if you're not sure of the question, better be asking me now than asking your coworker at work who has no idea either. Right? So let's see. I'm looking forward to your questions on the questions. That's part of this course. I want to see if you're thinking about what you're putting rather than just putting an answer down. All right? I went a little longer because we're just starting out. They'll go quicker on some chapters than others. So, great job, guys. Any other thoughts? I'm going to stop my recording, and the rest of the class is yours to work on your program.